In a world seeking light amid darkness, we must ignite awakened consciousness, awaken your soul, ignite your inner fire, evoke your inner wisdom, for when you confront your own shadow, you unveil your inner light, human fluence, creating a new reality. Hello and welcome everyone. Today we have not one but two sidekicks. We have Susan and Connie from Purple Door Soul Source, located right in Rochester, New York. Welcome to the show, ladies. How are you?
Good, thank you. This is good. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. I guess the best place to start would to get know you guys a little better. Can you tell me a little bit about how you came to embrace your psychic abilities? Also, about your upbringing, if you had any experiences and maybe didn't know how to pinpoint what they were. And also maybe what are some misconceptions about your world?
Oh, that's a lot.
Okay. Go ahead, Connie.
Well, I'll start with mine. It's the left side of our duo here. I always knew I was intuitive, but never paid attention to it until after I got older. Like I was around my 50s and just started to look at meditation, spirit guides. I found a spiritual church that kind of introduced me to mediumship. And I didn't think it was going to go anywhere, but I was intrigued by it and I learned some stuff that way. That's where I met Sue, at the church.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The left side is, we do this all the time at continuing ed classes, but the left side of it is when I was watching an Edgar Cayce show, he was a trance medium in the 40s. And I wanted to know how he did it because my left side was going, there's got to be a reason why that's working. Like, so I kind of pursued it.
I like the how you touched on the left side and the right side of the brain. Is that what you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
For the viewers,
can you process?
Exactly, yeah. A lot of people aren't aware of that. I remember learning when I grew up, your right side controls the left side of your body and vice versa. I remember learning that in school, but they never really talked about, the right side creative versus the analytical brain. But very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We always say together we make one brain. She's very left-sided, I'm very right-sided. So we kind of make one. There's one whole brain there.
Yeah. How about you, Sue? Tell me your story. How did you learn to embrace your abilities and whatnot?
So mine just comes from a different angle. When I was a child, I had what I called my nighttime friends. I would get up in the middle of the night and go out into the living room of the house, just in a little brand new house that we lived in, my mother, father, and my brother. And I would go out in the living room and have all these conversations with my nighttime friends. And my parents would wake up and tell me, oh my God, you're sleepwalking. No, I'm not. I would tell them what I said or what was said to me, my responses, the whole bit. And of course, they didn't believe me. And they told me, I'm sleepwalking to go to bed. I would hear them in the next room, however, talking about how did she know that person died 10 years ago? We never talked about that. And so I would hear all of that. And what ended up happening to me, I guess, was that I became very afraid of what it was because the people that I loved, that I admired and felt safe with didn't see or didn't experience what I experienced. Now, the other side of this is my family's Italian Catholic, very steeped in Catholicism at that point. And, what I was hearing in church and in my religious classes were sort of scaring me, I guess, away from what was happening to me. Yeah, so, that part of it, and I'll never be sorry I was raised Catholic. But at the same time, at that time, it frightened me. And so I pushed everything away. I pushed it away as best I could. A lot of experiences, but fast forward, 2001, I'm married. I've got my children, my 3 kids, my husband and I, and I got very, very sick, and I had a near-death experience at that point. Actually had an infection inside of my heart. And so after that, now I was a hairdresser for 40 years. And so after that, I realized when I finally got back to work that I was, I guess, experiencing it all over again. And something was different. And I sought out a place to kind of develop it, manage it, control it, figure it out, understand it better. So the only place I knew again was this spiritualist church that I had heard about. That's where I met Connie. But everybody kept telling me, Sue, you have this gift, and because you touched the veil and you pierced the other side, and none of it made sense to me, Joe. None of it. I'm like, this doesn't feel right to me at all. I kept going, and I suddenly realized, probably took me about a year, that it wasn't that I came back with something, it was that I left something behind, and that was fear.
Wow.
So that's the best way I can explain it.
That's really powerful. You talked about having these experiences when you were a child, and you didn't have anyone to validate any of this for you. You were just
No.
You just thought it was all scary and didn't know what to make of it.
Well, it's funny. I didn't know it was scary. I wasn't afraid, let's say this, until I knew I was supposed to be afraid. Because as a young child, I didn't know I was supposed to be afraid.
Yeah,
But because
sure.
my parents didn't see it, and it kept happening. This went on until I was about 11 years old. So, this was a constant thing that it frightened me because nobody else saw it. What's wrong with me?
So you guys met at this spiritualist church.
Mm-hmm.
You realized you both have these gifts. And then, what, you opened Purple Door?
Connie opened the Purple Door in 2007.
Yes, I was 30 years at Kodak. We were going through the downsizing, so I retired early and opened. What I wanted was a store place for people to learn and experience classes in mediumship. So that was 2007. And then Sue joined 2009?
No, 2007. It was the same year.
It was the same year
that I came to the church.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But I asked her a couple years later to manage the psychic medium studies. And then we just started working together after that.
That was a couple years later.
That was a couple years later.
That's awesome.
Oh.
So can we differentiate the difference between a psychic and a medium, and also some of the misconceptions people have?
So this is how we view psychic mediumship. We sort of discern the information. So in our minds, information that is psychic would regard someone's life, their past, right now, their present, and opportunity potential that aids them in shaping their future. So we do not deal with creepy warnings of death and doom. We look for opportunity. We look for potential, not to frighten somebody, because to leave someone fearful when they leave you or looking over their shoulder to us is completely unethical.
Right.
The medium side then is us communicating with those that have passed for people.
Right.
And then it also includes animals, Joe. So many people come in for pet communications as well.
So you might find a lot of names with the psychic side or the medium side, clairvoyant, clairaudient, those kinds of things. But it really is the receiving of the information, the different types. And sometimes it's myth. So, and there's this misconception out there that all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. But that's a choice by the person, not the information that's coming through. So we really do start bumping up against some of these myths because we come from a point or perspective of information that is received, interpreted through our mind and experiences, then delivered. So we bust through some of the mystical stuff, the spiritual stuff. In fact, we say here, we don't put our spirituality into our mediumship. We keep it separate.
Right.
Case in point would be a lot of metaphysical people understand the chakra system, energies of the body from India, right? That's an Eastern concept. And so some mediums will go, well, I see a blockage in your heart. Well, that's a spiritual belief, not necessarily a psychic reading. So we separate the two.
So we average off the street coming in for a reading,
Right.
doesn't know what we're talking about, and they hear blockage in the heart, and now they think they've got a physical issue.
Right. So we separate that stuff.
And even though we met at the spiritualist church, neither of us are spiritualists. And again, we don't work through any religious dogma, guys, anything like that. So we don't look at what we have as a gift as much as it's just an ability. So in being the two of us, right, Connie always being an intuitive individual, but grew to be a very strong, powerful medium, me starting out as a medium and grew to understand how to communicate it. So it's all learning and growing.
Forever.
Forever and ever.
Because we find out the more we do, the more there is out there. And that makes sense because the universe is unbounded, right? So that's as spiritual as we're going to get there. As far as the expansion or expression of consciousness that we have. And that's the basis of the work anyway. So, because we're all one, we're all together, vibes, all that.
How would you define consciousness? Just curious.
I'm just gonna put it in my thinking. There's energy and consciousness, and science doesn't understand where that break is. Energy, the Big Bang, energy expressed, but there's an observer that they find. Double slit experiment shows that there is an observer that directs the energy. So consciousness is this information power, all-knowing kind of thing. We could call it God or all sorts of things, but it's really the collective of how we know what we're doing as an expression of the energy that we have. So that's how I define it. And
so when you
I'm sorry. So in that consciousness is all these pieces of definitions, spirits, the physical, those kinds of things. So it's all wrapped up in that big umbrella term.
Yeah, I like that a lot. When you guys connect, when you guys, I read a great book on mediumship, and I forget the author's name, but she described it as sitting in your power, which I really liked. I don't know, that just stuck with me. But how do you guys connect? What is your process like? We talked a little bit about the clairs, clairvoyance, claircognizance, all those, and the different extrasensory perceptions people have. But I'm curious how it works for you and, what it feels like, what your process is.
Well, I'm going to interject real quick because Sue and I, when we were first getting together, we wrote a couple of books, and I would say, Sue, when you were in heaven, how did exactly what you're asking? So she's really the one that would piece the two things together, what she was receiving and how it makes sense to the regular person.
So, we teach a lot of classes on this, and the best way that I could say this is that first thing you have to do is just trust. That's the first thing. You have to trust yourself. But what we don't do is we do not have ceremony, Joe. So we're not doing any kind of ceremony in order to connect. There is no meditation before we read. I like to meditate, but I don't meditate for my readings. I meditate for my own personal well-being. I don't believe it's necessary to meditate before a reading because most often when people have a natural experience, they're just going about their daily life. They've done nothing in order to make that experience happen. Right? So it's just that. It's just that intention. Okay, here we go. I am going to connect to your energy. I'm going to look for things that are going to help you, make you feel comfortable, secure, validated, and go. And that's pretty much it. It's go. It's kind of step in. So for me, if you were to come for a reading, I start out, I tell you what's going to happen. I say a little prayer, and I say the little prayer for the person sitting in front of me so that they understand what I'm asking for, that I'm asking for good things to come for them, good information, be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm then going to just, in my mind, I say, I want to see who's around you in the spirit side. So I'm going to acknowledge the genders of people that I see, 2 males and a female. I'm going to move into the energy of the person sitting with me. How do I feel with you? What do you feel like? Not what you look like, right? What do you feel like? And then I ask people, do you want to see who's there from the spirit side, or do you want to go to life? And then we just go. So it's really not a deep process. We call it a step-in process. Just do it. It's like Nike, right? Just do it. Just go in and do it. We put too much around it. It's nature.
How long did it take to get? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh. So a lot of people, it is intuition, it is imagination, it is ESP, extrasensory perception. It is something that our brain picks up all these signals of information and then translates it into something we know, which is through the senses, right? So we know what a hot thing feels like, or a rose would look like or smell like. So the information pings those things and lets us know that. So that's what we say by trusting what's coming in and then express it out. And that's a learned process.
Yeah. When you guys first started to, come out of your psychic shell and start to do your first readings, how have they changed over time? And how, has the information changed in clarity? I'm sure it has, but what else has changed, in regards to, you said that you just step in. I'm sure it wasn't like that when you first started.
Oh, that's a great question.
Well, for me, it kind of was, I guess, because I didn't enjoy any of the processes that I had to do prior to doing a reading. Right, the processes just weren't working for me. I don't work with spirit guides. I don't say prayers of protection. Nothing like that. So to me, it's just I just had to learn to trust what I was getting and say it. But of course, it has changed 100%. As Connie likes to say, the depth and the breadth of the reading is what has grown. Right? When you first start doing readings, you can go, oh my God, I got to do a 10-minute reading. I'm so nervous. And then you move to, I did a half-hour reading. Oh no, and I've got to do an hour reading. And now an hour goes by in a blink. But it's a constant growth. Every reading that I do, we do here, afterwards, there's a process of how could I have made that clearer? How could I get deeper information on that? How could I have helped this person even more?
So as I mentioned before, because consciousness is unlimited, we get shown more and more. We keep pushing the envelope of receiving and translating. And so if you don't have boundaries around your mediumship, and we call that spirituality, those kinds of things. If you don't have those boundaries, the sky's the limit. Because these will be provided that make reference to what maybe some past experiences we've had, or it'll just ping something that their client understands. And that starts the story of the message. And that's, we just start working that way all the time.
You asked Joe, what are some of the things that the myths?
Right.
And if I may, it kind of goes along with what we're talking about. So some of the things that we've learned throughout our careers, being raised, and I'm going to bring this up, being raised Catholic, I was taught to believe that if someone took their own life, they weren't welcome into heaven. They were in limbo or purgatory. So imagine my surprise when I get grandma that went to church every day, and then right next to her is the son who took his own life, and they're coexisting in a beautiful space. Do I change the universe, or do I change my own mindset, my own belief system? So, for us, people will say, well, I can't bring him in. He's burning in hellfires because he took his own life. No, he's not. It's energy. It's energy. Energy has no bounds. Another myth. You can't talk to them until they've been gone for 6 months. They're busy getting used to their spirit body. Nope. No, they could come in immediately. They go from life, exactly. Yeah. They go from being an incarnate spirit in flesh or energy, incarnate energy, to being discarnate out of flesh energy in that second, in that moment.
And consciousness doesn't have to get used to anything. It knows what it's doing. Now, what might be confusing is the emotional part that's around it. The emotional part stays here. It's not part of the consciousness, if I may. And I'm using the mind of consciousness, the mind of God, the mind of our mind, the grand mind, or whatever that is. The emotion stays here. So that might be a little, that might need a little bit more explanation, but it doesn't get caught up with what spirit is doing, what that person is doing as a spirit. I don't know if that was clear, but
Yeah. I've heard that before. Yeah, that it takes, a week for the soul to leave the earthly plane or whatever, or they like to stick around for the funeral and all the grieving. But those are interesting concepts. And if we can go into, I'm not sure how familiar you are with reincarnation and karma and all that, but that kind of makes me think about, if we do reincarnate as new souls, as in a human being or whatever it might be, as this vessel, people have also had like the caveat of, how can my psychic see my dead grandfather or grandmother if they're reincarnated here now, or something along those lines. But like you said, it's like you're a fragment of consciousness from that eternal consciousness, But I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with reincarnation and karma and how that ties into this stuff.
So we look at an example, I guess, would be looking at the soul or the energy body think of it as like a library. So your soul would be a book, or the essence of Joe, right? The life lived of Joe. Think of it as a book in the library of all of your soul's experience or your energy's experience. So if grandpa already reincarnated, that's okay, because the energy of the memories of that life, grandpa's life, is still accessible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's how we look at that. So reincarnation, I believe in reincarnation, but I don't want to put too much spiritual stuff on it, I guess.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
It's like you're either infinite as an energy, body, consciousness, or you're not. And we go, the universe won't be that restrictive. So we do think of there's a sliver of consciousness that's assigned to grandpa, let's say, in the realm of the soul's existence. And we can access that.
And if you think about karma, karma it's a religious construct, really, right? It's a spiritual construct. It would be like the Native Americans believing you put something out bad and it's going to come back at you. Same thing. It's just their sort of ways of looking at it. And I think that there's a lot of ways that people have been managed through belief systems and religion. And so is there karma? I think possibly. I don't know. But it's not something I would deal with on a daily basis in my work.
Very interesting. We did touch on intuition, and this is actually such a big and important thing. It's something that I considered myself to have a good intuition, and
also the thing with intuition is it's like you get gut feelings, but also you don't know if it's your monkey mind working, you know.
Right.
So how can people differentiate these, and how have you found, ways to sharpen your own intuition, especially in your own work?
Mhm. We talk about trust and everything, and understand that the information is expressed with that little voice, that gut feeling, which is what intuition is defined as part of the whole connection to information around our physical and energy environment. And then you just start looking at what you are getting or receiving, and then what's actually happening. Well, I think I'll call my mother today, and all of a sudden the phone rings and it's her. Well, there's that information connection happening. We call intuition. So when you start experiencing those things and then seeing it come back to you, that's a synchronicity relationship that we learn to grow with, and then it's part of your daily life at that point.
We call it sixth sensory living.
Yeah.
But it is trust, because you do have to understand that some of that is your mind, like you said, monkey mind. But you begin to notice things. So I say, honestly, the best thing for people to do would be when you have a little hit, little intuitive hit, and it worked, write it down. Keep a little booklet of your intuitive hits, and you begin to see that. What did I feel before that knowledge came in? What was I doing? What was I experiencing? And you begin to see patterns. We are normally we look for patterns. That's how we think. We look for patterns. And so when you establish a pattern, you learn to trust it.
Yeah, it's very important. That validation you need, writing down those weird off things during the day that just, and then a synchronicity happens or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it's important to not just go through your day and forget about it, but to write it down and validate it.
Right. Engage it. Don't be on rote, cruise control with just the physical. Do that interplay with what is going through your imagination and your mind, and then seeing when or where it does show up.
We've learned from a very young age to vilify our imaginations. When we're very young, use your imagination, and then all of a sudden there's a switch. Don't use your imagination. Now use your knowledge. And so we put away our imagination. Right. But when we re-engage that, it's almost like looking at things with that childlike wonder. I wonder if I thought that I'm going to only get green lights on the way home tonight, what would happen? What's the difference? If you don't, you don't. But at least you use your imagination in engaging yourself and not vilify it. Our brains, the information that we receive has to come through our imagination to form thought or picture. So we have to use it.
I like that.
We have to play.
Yeah.
Can we talk about your own clients' readings and, how they have navigated their own life challenges, life decisions? What do people come to you for besides, a mediator between them and a lost loved one? As far as a psychic reading, what are people looking for, and what have you been able to really help people with?
Very good question.
Yeah.
So psychic readings, well, let me start with this. In the state of New York, the great state of New York, there was actually a law in the books that says fortune telling is illegal. It's actually on our law books. But so what this is it's not us telling you what you should do, what you need to do, or what you will do. It's all about opportunity and potential. It's keeping someone's free will intact. So mostly when people come in for a psychic reading, they're in the middle of maybe some big changes in their life, or they're unsure about where they're standing. They don't feel like they have a strong foundation. They want that validation. They want that comfort. They want somebody to say, you're okay. you're okay, but let's look and see what your opportunities are, your potential. So looking ahead to future, most people come for maybe work stuff, relationship stuff is a big one, family issues.
Or spiritual purpose.
Yes, that kind of
where am I
thing.
going in my life now?
So really it's how can we help you to get a glimpse of what your opportunities are in your future? If you like where sort of your path is leading, great. The other opportunity is if you don't like it, what do you need to do to change where you're going? So we work with a lot of psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors. They send many people to us to augment their therapy because of the way that they would be empowered.
And a lot of times the reading is, how did you get to the present? Let's
Right.
verify some of the things that are have been experienced or shown. And then some of the potential that might be shown or provided. And then the conversation would say, yes, I did like that. I did want to do that. That is an interest of mine. I put it on the back burner. And the conversation helps them to take a step, make a choice, those kinds of things. Again, psychic mediums should not be doing the you need to, it's guidance, not instruction. Because free will and choice is paramount. That's our number one thing here. And then people go off from there. But even to validate something that they know is like under the surface in their own minds, that gives them power right there to do something.
And really powerful stuff is during a medium reading is if the spirit person, the energy of the person, the life lived, if they come through and talk about sitter's life and what they're doing and offer information through them, that's very powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any like really profound moments or memories you can share of a story or something? Maybe somebody, came through that the person didn't expect, or in a psychic reading, somebody reached out to you after and they, totally changed their life or something. I don't know. Do you have anything like that you can share?
We can share some stories, but because everything is personal,
Yeah,
kind of
for
like,
sure.
You can't.
Then if we gotta change the names, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Kind of
But we've had several. We actually just got a beautiful letter today.
yes.
From a reading that was done, one of our readers, not one of us, that had offered a woman some thoughts about getting through grief from a loved one. And she took it to heart and she went to the space or the place that she was told to and had a very profound experience. She ended up finding an abandoned, in a gazebo, 3 dozen red roses abandoned in a gazebo.
That made sense to her.
Yes.
From her loved one. Synchronicity.
On that day.
So those are great stories.
Right. There's God, I don't want to share too much that
I know.
I would blow anything.
It's
I
okay.
can share a story. I'll share the 3 stories.
Yes, because it's in our book.
The story's in our book, so I'm free to share it. Went to a house party. People invite us in to go to the house, and then their friends come and get readings at the house. So this is several years ago, and I went to this party, and I'm up in this room, and this man comes up, and he is just giving me this. He's like, giving a hard time, total hard time. I have your father. I believe he died of lung issue, all this stuff, telling him all this stuff. And he's like looking at me. And I said in my mind to his dad, please tell me something very specific that I can offer to him so that he knows you're really here. And the father said to me, okay, tell him 3. And I'm in my head arguing with this spirit guy. I'm not going to tell him 3. You're going to tell him 3. No, I can't. Yeah, tell him 3. He'll understand. I thought at that point, what's the diff? I'm going to do it. Your father said 3. He looked at me. He goes, my father said 3. I said, your father said 3. This exchange went back and forth 3-4 times. Started to cry.
Yeah.
Then he told me that he was one of 4 children. He was the 3rd boy. His father never called him by his name. They only ever called him 3.
Oh, wow.
So he was kind of blown away, which I was blown away because I didn't trust the 3 thing, right? A year later, he comes into my office store, and he says, I owe you an apology. I said, why? He said, I was a bad word. I was a, you know what? I go, no. He goes, I was, you can admit it. I said, okay, you were. You were. He says, he never believed until that moment, which was, I felt very lucky to have been given that information to share with him. So, and that's why we don't think this is a gift. This is just an ability to listen and to trust the information. That's it.
And then, we call that information the points of proof or evidence that proves the message to the sitter or the client. So we're not telling people, oh, you have to stop and smell the roses, or you're in a 5th dimensional crisis, something like that. It has no meaning to them. But telling a son that he was referred to as 3, he could walk away knowing his dad was there. He had a conversation with his dad. And that's wonderful.
Yeah. Yes. We've read for people that have, the spirit people that have murdered, they've been abusers, horrible, terrible people, people that have been murdered, died horrific, tragic deaths. And the emotions that come through that are just like we're talking right now. This is just information.
Because they're no longer suffering. They don't have that emotion, which is what we spoke about before. The emotion stays here. They're fine. They show us, they tell us things that have happened after their passing to let their loved one know they're always around. Those kinds of things. Things that were shared where nobody else was in the room, like holding their hand during next to their bed, and those kinds, and that nobody else knew that. Those kinds of things. So it's it's the evidence that really supports the connection.
Yeah. That's so fascinating. It's so interesting.
It is.
I've never had a
more
reading.
Stories, but we just can't because of.
Yeah, no, that was perfect, and I'll be sure to share all of your resources and your books and stuff if anyone's interested.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In reading. I do have one more question before we start to wrap this up, and that is about. It's kind of I'll ask this one. I'm really fascinated in dreams. I'm not sure how deep you go into dreams, but the collective unconscious and kind of almost. I don't know how to eloquently state this, but it's like a realm of no time. When you're dreaming, you can access, the Akashic records, all the way to, the deep recesses of your subconscious mind, showing you symbols and stuff that don't make sense until later. But I've had so many dreams that have been validated later in my life. All these things culminate and it all makes sense. But I'm curious what you make of that. If you have any advice or tips for me or any listeners to kind of maybe hone in on that a little better, and just what you think of all that.
So the brain, you say the brain. So, we look at how the brain works. Your brain picks up some 400 million bits of information at any moment. You process about 2,000 of those pieces of information. That's it. So it's all in there, right? We use 15% of our brain max? And so all of that information is there, seen and unseen. Yeah, that collective consciousness that we were talking about earlier. When you go to sleep and your brain speed slows, the hertz slows down. Where you generally will remember the dreams, you're in that theta state, I believe it is, right? Theta state, which is when you're coming out of sleep or going into sleep. Right. So that's kind of so you're in your conscious mind, but your subconscious or superconscious mind is able to flow through that. And so what is that? If we put that in like very layman's terms, your filters are just wide open. When we're in our waking state, bam, 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 our filters come in. And so it stops us from receiving that. Now I've got all this peripheral information coming through. So in your dream state, it's such a relaxed thing that your mind is open.
And imagination comes in again, starts playing pictures and putting references in your dream that represent you, your life, traveling, those kinds of things. So dream interpretation really symbols, colors, people that we're also picking up in a medium reading. We're picking up symbols. We're picking up people references. We call it PALS, actually, personal, associative, literal, or symbolic. The type of information that's coming in. So it's almost the same thing as far as a medium or a way that information comes at us. Because we're not reading a teleprompter. So a lot of people say, well, can't you just blah, 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 and, fill in the blank? No, we're not reading a book. We're picking up pieces from spirit, from psychic hits, from our reference and their people and stuff like that. And there's the work or the professional service of a medium psychic that puts it in a way that is part of a conversation and then is the service or the message. So dream interpretation is kind of locked in there.
So our minds during a reading are very much like what you experienced in the dream, because we allow our brain to say, okay, I'm not going to have those filters. I'm going to allow that information to come. So you've experienced it already. Sounds like you've had some prophetic dreams, these things that came true after the fact. Visitation, spirit visitation dreams. People talk about, I know they were there. I know they were there. I felt them. I saw this. I know that was going to happen. And 10 years later it happened, or 2 days later it happened. It's because the information is around us all of the time. The energy of those that have passed are around us all the time. It's just what we want to open our mind to experience. Mm-hmm. Dreams can go on forever. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. Well, this has been so fascinating and insightful, and I really appreciate it, you answering all my questions. And I do want to ask if you want to share, any of the places people can connect with you, schedule a reading, any of the, things you have going on at Purple Door, and anything else you want to share.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Connie.
Well, we have a website, purpledoorsoulsource.com, listing our services and our classes. We're here in the Winton place in Brighton, so you can come into the store and look to our website for the services and that sort of thing. We offer classes for people to learn some of these basic stuff. Sue, again, is the director of Psychic Medium Studies and Tuition, so all those classes are always listed. We also go out into the off-site corporate parties, home parties, group book clubs. Thank you. So organizations, those kinds of things. Library. And they're also coming. Oh, right, we do libraries. And they're also coming here because we have space that you can just bring your party into it. So we're kind of like we're everywhere.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, they can also call us at our it's 585-427-8110. So people can book appointments by calling, or they can book appointments online through our website.
Awesome.
And we do phone and Zoom as well.
Oh, yeah, you got it in this days and age, right? Age.
Right.
What do you want the viewers to take away before we say goodbyes? Anything you want to leave with the viewer?
Well, I'm going to say knowledge is power, connection is joy.
Yeah.
Engage this. Everybody has an inkling that there is a connection. There's something that makes sense that I can't prove. And then when we could still have conversations with our loved ones, or even just with ourselves, that as we move forward, and with assurance and confidence and validation, go for it. Knowledge is power, connection is. So that's how I say it.
And I want people to understand that this is something that everyone possesses. And that if you're interested in it, engage it, pursue it, learn to re-engage your imagination. That will re-engage your intuition. It's a beautiful way of living. It's a joyous ability.
Yeah.
That we possess and grow. And I so appreciate you having us on, Joe.
Yeah, this was wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to do an interview, and I said, who would be the most interesting people to have on? And not one, but I got two sidekicks. So this is just, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
We actually have about 12 readers here. So it's good.
Yeah, I saw you have a big portfolio. Yeah, I got to schedule one now.
Very lucky.
I'm going to schedule a reading.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Well,
our
thank
books
you,
are
ladies.
called Everyday Conversations, the Key to the Contemporary Medium.
Okay, and that's right on your website then?
Yes.
And you guys, you're on Facebook too? Do you do a lot of stuff on the Facebook
and
page as well?
Instagram. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I'll share all those so everyone can
Thank you.
check them out.
This is great.
All right,
Thank you,
ladies,
Joe.
have a great night.
Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so
Thanks.
much.
Thank you. Good to talk to you.
You too. Stay
Have a
warm.
great night. Thank you. You too. Bye now.
Bye.
In a world seeking light amid darkness, we must ignite awakened consciousness, awaken your soul, ignite your inner fire, evoke your inner wisdom. For when you confront your own shadow, you unveil your inner light, human fluence, creating a new reality.